In this video, I'm going to show you how to sew the background to your Wild Star diamonds. So I have all my diamonds pressed and trimmed, and I have my background cut. So you need to cut squares listed in the pattern and then cut each square in half along the diagonal. So each square turns into 2 triangles, and the smaller triangles will go here, and then the larger triangles will go in these corners. And this quilt is not sewn with Y seams. So rather, if we were sewing it with Y seams, we would sew the diamonds all together first and then sew the background. But since we are not using Y seams, we will sew the background to each diamond individually and then sew these units together. So I'm just laying these out so you can see what it will look like. We have small triangles here, like that, and then the larger triangles in the corners. So after you have your quilt arranged how you like it, the first thing we do is sew the smaller triangles to our diamonds. Okay, so we will take a small background triangle and a diamond, and we place them right sides together like this. We need to make sure that there's a 1/4 inch here, so the background triangle goes over the diamond by 1/4 inch, and then this side is all lined up. So I'll pin that and then I'll give you a closer look. Okay, so that's how that looks. You can see the background triangle comes over the diamond by 1/4 inch. And this side, you'll have a little bit coming over, and that's how you want it also. So you will have one like this, and then this is the mirror image. So it's the same concept, but it's the mirror image of this one. So we will also, I have to do it this way, offset by 1/4 inch. And pinning always helps. It's not necessary, but I always pin. So it helps me keep everything in place and make sure nothing is shifting around as I'm sewing. Especially with all these seams on the Wild Star, I highly recommend pinning. At least 2 pins, maybe 3. So you can see that one comes over the top 1/4 inch as well. So when we sew these, this one you will sew starting here and then end it here and backstitch. This one you start sewing here and then sew along this edge. And you can either press the seams open or towards the background fabric, whichever you prefer. So here I have my diamonds and my small background triangles sewn together, and I pressed my seams open. I also trimmed the dog ears that were on these edges, so go ahead and do that if you haven't. Then we will sew our large triangles to this piece. So you will just flip it right sides together, and in the same way we need to offset by 1/4 inch. And then line up these edges and pin on this side. And I'm also going to pin one in the middle. So you will have one that looks like this, and then on the other side we do the same thing. Again, it's the mirror image. So you flip that so they're right sides together. We want 1/4 inch here. and then these edges lined up. So again, start sewing here and end here, and I'm going to press my seams open again after I sew these seams. All right, here we have our large background triangle sewn to our diamonds. So now we will start sewing these pieces together. So take 2 of those, and this will form a quarter of our star. So we will put these right sides together. And first, I like to line up this seam here where the diamond meets the background triangle. So line that up best you can and put a pin there. Then smooth out the diamond edges and pin where they come together at a point. And you can put another pin here if you'd like. Then smooth out your background and put at least 1 pin there, probably 2 or 3. So we will sew these 2 together and press your seams open. And you will do that for all of these pieces. And then after we have those ready, we will sew our quarter stars together into halves. So here are 2 of our quarter quilt pieces. Now we can sew those together into a star half. So place them right sides together. And again, I like to first line up this seam here where the background meets the diamond, and place your first pin there. Then you can line up this corner. That edge should line up. Then smooth out this side and make sure that your center seam is lining up here. So those are the 3 most important places that we want lined up. And then you can also put more pins if you want. So sew your quarters together into halves, press your seam open, and then we will sew those 2 halves together to form our star. So here are the 2 star halves, and we can now pin them and sew them together. So again, place them right sides together. And first I like to line up the center seam, which is kind of hard to tell with all these fabrics everywhere. But line up that center seam, pin there, and then line up these seams where the background meets the diamonds. Then line up the edges. And you can put more seams in, or excuse me, more pins in, as many as you'd like, but those are the most important seams I like to have lined up. Okay, so after you have these pinned, you can sew your seam to sew these 2 halves together, and then I'm going to press my seam open again, and then I will show you the quilt. Here is my Wild Star Quilt, all sewn together. I am going to add some borders to it, which is the instructions on how to do that are in the pattern. So mine is going to be a little larger than it is now, but here is how you sew the background to your diamonds.